So then, so I'm Dolores Cahill. I'm just going to say a brief few words, if that's all right. And I'm just going to say a little bit about my background, my values very quickly, why I decided to get involved in Irish Freedom Party, and then we're just going to give you information on the 9 candidates that we have now standing for the general election, and then a little bit about the meeting that we had today and where we think it is going forward. So I suppose a little bit about me. I was born in Tipperary. I grew up in Kilcash, Kilsheelan. I went to school in primary school in Kilcash in the on Slieve na Mon, and we grew up on a farm. And I went to school in Carrick-on-Suir in the Mercy Convent, and from there I went on to Trinity to do a degree in natural sciences and genetics and immunology, then a PhD, and then I went on to be a scientist in Germany for 10 years and set up a company around early diagnosis of autoimmune disease and cancer. And then in 2003 and 4 I came back to Ireland to have an associate professorship and then a full professorship in UCD in translational medicine in the School of Medicine. And my area is to translate innovation to people so that they won't be patients. So it's kind of in combining innovation with research for early diagnosis of disease. And I suppose my values would be just very simple around democracy, rule of law, freedom of speech. So really, if you want to live in a country, it has to work for you. And what we see in Ireland is that Ireland is working for some people. So if you have a reasonable job, you can have a good standard of living. But Ireland isn't working, you know, if you are an Irish person or a builder in Dubai or a nurse in Australia, or if you are a grandparent or an aunt and uncle and you're just seeing your children and grandchildren on Skype, Ireland isn't working for you. And if you're homeless, it's not working for you. And if you're trying to run a small business and you are strangled with regulation and taxes, it's not working for you. So one of the reasons why, and also we know when you work as a professional in Ireland, there's kind of an insidious level of corruption, or it is that things are not run well. And if you try and improve systems, often the people who are trying to make things better are bullied out. You know, it's the teachers who are actually trying to say, can't you do it better? And so I was very lucky in my 20s. I won awards in Germany for my research, and I was on various councils representing scientists and interacting with the government. And then when I came back, I was appointed by the Taoiseach in a voluntary role on the Advisory Science Council in Ireland from 2004 to 2014, where we tried to improve, I was trying to improve innovation, improve all aspects of science, engineering and maths from primary school to foreign direct investment. And what you realise when you work with the government and in this voluntary capacity is that you could actually get things done, but there's kind of a dead hand on the system. You know, that things could actually be done a lot better. And then for about 15 years, I've been fortunate enough to be an expert in the European Commission and advise them as well. And it's only when you are involved in it that you see the amount of waste of money that is happening in the European Commission. So what I would say is that Ireland actually, for the last maybe 20 years, has really gone downhill in every aspect, right? We all know, whether it's we didn't have homelessness 20 years ago, we didn't have the kind of taxes, we didn't kind of have housing, and we have a whole generation that have been lost the way the government funded the banking system. The banks are dead, we're paying a huge amount of taxes to pay this debt we shouldn't have got, and the banks are not loaning on commercial businesses in rural Ireland, and it's very difficult to actually create employment. Whereas if you live in other countries, it's much easier. And when you look at, it is actually easy, it is actually easy to create jobs, right? You know, if you're in other countries, it's actually the government works with people. So the more you look at the system that we have, from taxes, revenue, the education system, the healthcare system, the court system, the government system, it's not working. And a lot of the politicians are, as we know, working to kind of make the country work for the people who donate to their campaigns. And a lot of the big businesses like Google and Facebook are in Ireland because we are, you know, providing an environment where they have to pay very low taxes. And for the last 10 years, for example, 60% of people that got jobs were non-Irish people. Because obviously in a globalized world, if you can bring in a lot of people, you can reduce the kind of salaries, and so that Irish people then can't really live, because the salaries for certain jobs are too low if you actually have to pay rent and you have to provide housing for your family. So Ireland has really gone from a country where it looked after its own citizen to a globalized world, and it's not really working anymore for Irish people. So what we would like to do is to just elect ordinary people. So I just mention the people that are standing. So there's me. So my background would be science, innovation, creating business in Tipperary. Michael Leahy is in Clare. So he was on board Planola, and he's an architect and a town planner and a businessman. So he's standing in County Clare. There's Melissa O'Neill from Wexford, who was previously elected as well as a councillor for Kilkenny.
Kilkenny Council.
Kilkenny Council.
I ran in the by-election, and I ran in the locals of West Waterford and the locals of South Kilkenny, and I have sat for 5 years on Kilkenny Council.
Very good. Kilkenny. And then Frank Shinnick, who's coming tonight. He's a farmer. He's an award-winning organic farmer and makes organic cheese from Cork. And we have Dahi O'Faolain in Mayo, who's an American Irish. And what's his background?
He has travelled the world, and
and an Irish bar, I think.
English, and he had loads of professional jobs abroad.
Yeah, I mean, I've met him, I just don't know his background. Then Tara was coming as well, Tara McDowell. So she's a secondary school teacher from Cork, and she has a master's in Irish law and Brehon law,
Irish,
and she's a Gaeilgeoir.
Yeah.
So yeah, she's a secondary school teacher in Irish and history. And then we have John Bowler in Kerry. So he's an American Irish again, and he's a former mayor of one of the cities in Carlow, and he's in his 50s, and he's returned to live in Ireland about 2 years ago. And then we have 2 or 3 more people who haven't decided yet, and they'll decide by Tuesday or Wednesday. So part of the reason then why I decided to be involved in setting up Irish Freedom, and we also looked at other parties. Now, what we've been doing for the last year is trying to there's too many little parties in Ireland, but Irish Freedom, one of the issues, if you look at banking or housing or homelessness, a lot of the issues in the last 20 years is that since Ireland joined the European Union and went into the Euro and the Lisbon Treaty, we can't really control our banking system, we can't control the interest rate, we can't control the currency. And also we have a welfare system where anyone who comes into it, of course, can get welfare and housing. And that was done when Ireland didn't have an open border system, and what should have been done, which was totally foreseeable, is to say there had to be some arrangement that if somebody comes from different European countries, that their home country would pay their social welfare, for example, and their housing. So what we did, and the European Union did not do, is to foresee. They wanted freedom of movement, but what they didn't foresee, or they should have foreseen, is that if you get social welfare of 30 euros a week when the euro came in Bulgaria, and if you're Bulgarian, and that's okay, like when I went to Bulgaria, a full professor there gets 12,000 a year. This is Tara, by the way. Tara, sit in. Sit in.
Yeah.
Anyway, so if you're a full professor in Bulgaria, you get 12,000 a year. As a full professor, you can live very well. That's after 20 years' experience. But if you're on, we'll say, a pension in Ireland as an old age pensioner, you get the same amount of money. So when I go on behalf of the European Commission to Bulgaria, they actually said to me, all of our cousins that were scientists and postdocs, they've actually gone to not work in Ireland because they get more work there. You know, they get more money there. So what we've ended up now after 20 years is a situation where our welfare system and our pension system is going to be unsustainable if we don't do something about it. And so what we want to do is to get experts and provide solutions. So some of the main issues that Irish Freedom are going to be standing on are ones, I'll just list them out. Obviously freedom of speech is a big issue. Housing, health, protecting Ireland's heritage and our culture, looking at aspects of crime, corruption and justice, taxation, and then to have a clean and green Ireland. But what we're going to provide for each of these is actually solutions. So I was organising this platform of, we'll say, about 16 different organisations today. And informally, like supporting a public banking system was one of the top things, because what we have to do, the platform is going to be an educational platform to actually explain to people how banking works and how the taxation system works and how education works. But if you have a public banking system, you can actually solve homelessness and you can create jobs and you can address a lot of issues in Ireland. So what we are going to try and do in Irish Freedom is actually just provide solutions, because a lot of the parties, all of them in government, we should be judging them by their actions, not by what they say, right? So if you take a cold, hard look at all of rural Ireland and towns, they have really been run down in the last 20 years. Right? You know, the heart of Irish towns are totally decimated. We have something like 63,000 empty houses, and we have over 10,000 people in hotels that are homeless. And of course, and we've had this problem since like 2008. It was totally foreseen. So all you would have to do would be have an SSIA system to encourage people to take a house that's derelict and give them a tax incentive if it was their family home to renovate it. So you wouldn't have empty houses all over Ireland, and you wouldn't be paying $1,000 a week for a family in hotels. You know, for 1 week in a hotel, you'd have renovated a house. So, but when we now have people from all aspects of life, and some will say whistleblowers, people who have been in the system, tried to change things, and then they've been fired through various, state agencies or, different organisations, that you actually see there are huge resistances to change in Ireland. It's not just by accident that things are not sorted. And so part of the alliance that we had today were people who've been fighting within the system for 20 years, and they are now experts in corruption and law and challenging the state to actually address corruption. So that was, there were some people today that were actually very well known. So,
Hey.
hello.
How are you doing?
Great. So I
Take a seat, guys.
yeah. So I suppose I just finished there. So what we're doing is we are going to now. Obviously, we've been caught out by this election. All of us in Irish Freedom have full-time jobs. Okay, so this is just a fledgling organisation. We're really founded from 6 months ago, but we now have a network of volunteers. How many members do we have? I don't know.
Over 400.
We have 400 members, and we have about 5,000 followers, we'll say.
Yeah.
So we have about 400 members, about 4,000 or 5,000 followers that support us. And we have about 10 commons, and we say the Dublin Common gets between 35 and 40 people. We meet once a month.
Yeah.
And the Cork Common?
Roughly between 10 and 15.
10 and 15, yeah. So part of what we were doing in the platform today is we all now know the various other parties that are around, and that we're trying to see if we can come together. Because of course, if we all have to do websites, we all have to do policies, we all have to do commons, it's a huge waste of resources. And today, so we've been working behind the scenes at that for the last year, and then the meeting that we had this morning was kind of a culmination. And so the decision is that we will come together, first of all, to support each other with policies and information and media. And the outcome might be, even for this election, that we might just say we are like trying to be patriots standing for Ireland, to try and just name it. Because when you look at RTE in the media, they don't actually address issues of crime or corruption or the difficulties for creating jobs or tax incentives. There's no real discussion. It's all kind of an agenda that doesn't actually look at how difficult it is to create jobs in Ireland, or why is our education system going down, or, as people know, the banks aren't lending. So, and we even will be working on a news channel, like a radio channel and a news channel, so that every day you can actually, take the agenda away. And I think the group of people that were there, they would have on their social media about 500,000 between the group of people that were today in Ireland, like real people. So that if you have a news channel for half an hour a day, or a radio channel that goes out on Facebook, then it's where you actually really discuss real issues about what's going on in farming and in the beast plan and in revenue. And, there's various corrupt activities and things going on in the courts that people don't hear about, and with, children and Tusla, that are just wiped under the carpet, and the decisions that go on. Apparently there are 50,000 repossession orders this week. In Ireland there are 50,000 repossession orders for homes. 50,000 repossession orders for homes. And that's going on. That's what the judge said this week in the courts, right? But nobody's heard about that. So there are 50,000 people that, you know, are waiting for their homes to be possessed, but nobody is talking about it. So I suppose what we want to do is provide solutions. It's very easy for people to say, oh, homelessness or whatever. But actually, these are solvable problems. And the idea with the platform is that all of Irish people with expertise would come together to test out how realistic the solutions are before we would go. You know, so we'd have an internal group of a few hundred people. So there's about 45 people today, 50 people at that meeting.
Oh yeah, at least.
Yeah. So each of them representing large organisations, you know, from farming, banking or whatever, as well as the political parties. So what we would do in Irish Freedom is, as well, we want to be fairly, I would say we're centre, you know. We're actually made up of ordinary people that are teachers and farmers and small business owners to provide solutions. And the outcome would be an Ireland where our children and grandchildren and the next generation would actually have a future here in Ireland, and that they would be able to own their own house, you know, have enough money to feed their kids, and that their children would have a future. And for me, I suppose the other additional two things that would be very important would be that we retain our right for freedom of speech and to criticise the government and have open debate, and that we also unburden ourselves potentially to reduce Ireland's sovereign debt, so that there's another banking crisis coming, as I'm sure everybody knows, and that we need to prepare for the next regional banking crisis, because if we don't, there'll be another lost decade and there'll be more Irish people that will be gone. So freedom of speech to prepare for the banking crisis, and also to retain Ireland's language, culture and heritage. You know, that we are actually a minority in the European Union. We're less than 1%. Irish people under UNESCO, we have a right to retain our language and our heritage in our country. We are, you know, less than 1% of the European Union, and under the treaties we have a right, we have a minority status, and we have a right to retain our heritage, our culture and our language. And I think we shouldn't be intimidated from not standing up for our right to live in our country and speak our language and retain our culture. So that's it. So we're going to try and set up the Cumann in Tipperary. Thank you very much.